Hi, welcome to Weekend Review, where we look at some of the big stories from the week. I'm Phil O'Connor, the Live Enterprise Director, joined this week by Ben Felder from our Watchdog desk, Brian Sharp, our sports editor, and my old friend, the business editor, Dom Mikoy. Stuff going on this week, big news at the Capitol, actually all across the state. Teachers going to be in the classroom on Monday, not going to be in the classroom on Monday. What's the story?
Yeah, well, many teachers aren't. A planned walkout for April 2nd is still on for many districts, including a lot of the largest districts across the state. Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Edmond, Norman. A lot of these districts have said that they still plan to walk out and rally at the Capitol. A few weeks ago, the Oklahoma Education Association, demanded an increase in teacher pay, education funding, state employee salaries, healthcare funding, all told over $800 million, which included a $10,000 pay raise for teachers. This week, the legislature passed, pretty historic when you think about the political landscape, series of tax increases that would fund a $6,000 teacher pay raise. It would increase public school funding in terms of just a general funding by about $18 million, so well short of the $200 million in public school funding that the OEA was asking for. When that bill passed, the walkout plans were kind of unknown. The union had kind of backed off a little bit of its kind of forceful speaking in terms of, anything short of our demands will result in a prolonged walkout. I think they were trying to gauge what their teachers thought. Many schools that said that they would participate in a walkout said that, hey, this is good enough. It's a good first step. We're going to be in school on Monday. But within 24 hours, a lot of teachers started to, kind of say, hey, it's not just that we didn't get the $10,000 that we want for our pay raise. In fact, the biggest issue for us is there's not really a huge increase in public school funding. We've got momentum. We need to continue to show that we're serious. And so over the last couple days, you've seen a lot of schools now say, hey, you know what, we're gonna shut down on Monday. The union has said they're going to take it day by day, but we're already hearing some schools like Mustang say, hey, we're prepared to be closed on Tuesday as well. In fact, they've already announced they're going to be closed down on Monday and Tuesday, and they're going to go from there.
Well, now it seems like there's a messaging issue, because in the public's mind, they're probably going to sit there and say, well, we gave them the raise. And I understand what you're saying. Yeah. There's this whole other piece out there. The question is the public going to understand and realize that? Well,
that's an important question to ask for everyone, and especially the OEA, for school district leaders. The superintendent of Edmond schools said, hey, I would like to see more done, but I'm worried that if we close, that the public is just going to see this as what you just said, that, hey, they got a raise. Maybe it's not quite what they were looking for, but a $6,000 raise is still pretty significant. Why are they closing schools? And in closing schools is a pretty disruptive piece of action, for families and communities. I think the union has had to try to think, are we going to, they feel like the public has been on their side in recent weeks. Are we going to lose the public support? Are lawmakers going to turn against us and say, hey, we gave you something, that we've done something that we've never done before, which is increase taxes, at least not over the last couple of decades. You need to be more grateful. But like I said, there are a lot of teachers that say, hey, we've got the momentum. We've been planning to walk out. All attention is on us. There's an expectation that this will become a pretty dominant national story, and enough teachers said that they're willing to, I guess you could say, roll the dice a little bit on this, and not squander, something that's been in the works for a few weeks.
Right, and even last night there was a change from, a significant change already in what was approved the day before. That's got some people a little bit concerned about, how solid is this deal,
Yeah, and there's some concern of that. You're talking, so the legislature passed a series of tax increases, including a tax hike on gross production, which we'll get into here in a moment. There was a tax increase on hotel and motel stays. That got kicked back out. Now,
which we had a story in business would have put us up among the highest in the nation.
Among some hotels.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so when you talk, the State Department, from the State Department of Education, the legislature not only approved these tax increases, but they approved the budget for education. The budget seems pretty certain. So there's enough money to cover the teacher pay raises, the $6,000 on average, and the additional funding for textbooks. And like I said, when all is said and done, it's about $18 million extra that goes into kind of the general funding pot. Now, what they lost with that hotel motel tax is probably going to have to be made up somewhere as they start to complete the budget for other agencies and departments. But
which is about $50 million, right?
Well, yeah, but the State Department of Education feels pretty certain that, hey, we've got everything that they approved in terms of what our budget's going to look like is going to be covered. That's what we're going to get. But once again, it just shows how difficult it is, in the legislature to pass a tax increase. I mean, the House had approved it. 24 hours later, I mean, they weren't even willing to approve it again. So it's almost an hour by hour change, especially in the House, but in the House and the Senate in terms of which members are willing to approve a tax increase and which ones aren't.
Well, we've got a lot more coverage of the teachers' walkout scheduled for Monday. We've got stories this weekend in this weekend's paper. We also have a lot of information for parents about, if you have daycare issues or where you're going to put your kid on Monday or Tuesday or however long this may go on. We'll have a lot of information on that as well. So, Don, let's switch gears a little bit, although this has kind of a tie-in here. The changes in the gross production tax, that was also part of this agreement. Talk a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, I think part of this is when you have the legislature trying to get this through, and there was a sense of urgency, and a lot of this legislation was put on legislators' desks, hours before they had to vote on it. And the gross production tax has been something that's been an issue for a long time. And for the first 3 years of production, these wells pay 2%, and the legislature approved raising that rate to 5%. Well, separately, there was an effort to try and pay for teacher raises through a state question that would have bumped up the gross production tax by 5%. That's still out there. So the legislature set the gross production tax at 5%. If this state question goes on the ballot, and it's scheduled to, it would raise it another 5%, which would make the gross production tax 10%, which is more than anybody had contemplated. But in the law that in the statute that the legislature passed, they put in they wrote a bit that said, if that state question is approved to bump up the rate by 5 percentage points, then we will retroactively roll the rate back to 5%, so it would end up going to 7. Essentially, what the legislature said was 5 plus 5 equals 7. Now, the people who back this state question and the people in the oil industry who are much opposed to it both say, no, 5 plus 5 equals 10. And if this state question goes on the ballot and it's approved, the gross production tax would be 10%, which would be, significantly higher than the 2% they had been paying. Now, we still have the people who are backing this effort. They haven't even circulated their petition yet. They are looking to see, they're trying to gauge, what the will of the voters is. Would they be willing to support something that might raise the gross production tax all the way up to 10%? The whole idea behind that was to get raises for teachers. Teachers are going to get their raises. Maybe not everything they asked for has been so eloquently pointed out. But, so they're looking to see what they can do. But if it happens and it gets approved and it goes 10% or 7% or whatever is determined, there's clearly going to be some kind of a legal battle to try to determine what the gross production tax in the state of Oklahoma actually is.
Well, under this agreement, it would be at 5%, correct?
Yes, right, yeah.
Right.
And, I mean, that is something that the oil industry has generally been supportive of, right? Wasn't that part of the step-up plan?
4% was the step-up plan.
Okay.
And we heard from at least one legislator who said, they had been opposed to raising it to 5%, but then he said, we were really surprised to see that the oil industry, the energy people said, we support 4%. And when previously they'd said, you can't raise it. You've already raised it. You can't raise it again. I said, if you support 4%, we'll go to 5%. And that managed to actually get it a little more support than it previously had.
Well, 5 sounds better than 7.
Yeah,
but.
well, and once again, it kind of speaks to really kind of the historic nature of what happened this week. I mean, right now, a lot of what's happened is still being looked at through the lens of the OEA's demands and the teachers, wanting more school funding.
But you have a Republican-dominated.
But beyond that, and I think a lot of people have recognized that. A lot of teachers have said, "Hey, this is historic. This is surprising that we got this, but we don't want to squander the momentum. They want to continue to move forward." But beyond what may happen next week, I mean, like you said, I mean, a month or two ago, I mean, we saw some of the biggest business leaders in the state support a plan for 4%, and it couldn't get the ball across the goal line. Fast forward several weeks, and you have whoever you want to give credit to, was a union or teachers that were successful in getting something done that just even more so than what was on the table a couple months ago.
Well, I don't think
and
you
that
can
went
credit
down.
anything but the teacher threat of a walkout for what's happened. I mean, what other hammer was there hanging over the legislature to act?
Yeah, no, there wasn't. And so I think it's, while everyone's kind of, and we're going to continue to follow, what more are they pushing for, and what would that look like? I mean, a lot has been achieved, and I'm talking to a lot of teachers. They'll say like, hey, I recognize there's a lot that's been done, but we've suffered a lot.
And it's really interesting too, because now you see it Oklahoma, West Virginia, now it's in Arizona. There's been a long reckoning coming, maybe in education, about the pay that we pay those that we say are some of the most important people in our children's lives. So we'll see how that goes. But let's talk about something a little bit more fun, or maybe not so much fun. What is wrong with the Thunder? I mean, we'll make the playoffs, I know that, but the problem now is that we're going to get bounced early if we have to play somebody really tough, right?
Well, I mean, right now they're kind of hovering around that 4-5 spot. They lose to San Antonio on Thursday night, and it knocked them out of the 4th spot into 5th, where they're actually tied with San Antonio. They split the season series at 2-2, but San Antonio has a better record within the conference, so they get the tiebreaker, so they're in the 4th spot. Oklahoma City is in the 5th spot. That said, Oklahoma City is only 2.5 games away from not being in the playoffs. There's a very large gap between 2 and 3, and then everybody else is gathered up right there from 3 to 8 or 3 to 10 actually, within about a 3 or 4 game range. The Thunder has 6 games left, starting tonight with the Denver Nuggets. You hate to call one game in an 82 game season a must win, but as Brett Dawson pointed out, I sure wouldn't go and lose this game tonight. They need to win because they've got a tough schedule coming up. They've, like I said, 6 games left, and several of those are against some pretty formidable opponents. So we'll see. Last night, San Antonio, you went into the game thinking that they might be without LaMarcus Aldridge, which would be great if you're the Thunder. Aldridge plays, has a double-double. The Spurs have a weird ability to lock down the Thunder, unlike a lot of other teams can. The Spurs are one of the only teams in the league holding opponents under 100 points. The Thunder scores 99. So a lot of things kind of went into last night's game, and you saw some of the old issues pop up again. A little bit of hero ball in the 4th quarter with Westbrook chunking up 3-pointers and airballing one of them. He goes 0 for 4 in the game from behind the 3-point line. Just some of the same issues that have cropped up throughout the season were there last night.
Does the coach need to be worried if they...
I don't think so. I mean, you hear Presti talk, you hear the players talk, and that's one completely different message than what you get from fans. But it sure doesn't seem like it on the team side of it.
How's Scott Brooks' team doing?
Not that well.
Yeah, I mean,
they're okay.
They're okay.
Well, I want to just give you some inspirational advice that is, you can even come in sometimes as an 8 or 9 seed in a tournament and not really have a lot of expectations about what may happen. And,
they better not come into it as a 9 seed. If they come into it
as
a 9 seed, they're out of the playoffs.
Well, I'm just going to say, some people at the end of the year might not even think you deserve to be there, but,
Yeah. Here's an interesting thing, which I know people have talked about. If you end up as the 7 seed, you play Golden State in the first round,
but we match up pretty good with
Golden State. Which is not expected to have Steph Curry for the first round. He's hurt, and he's not expected back until the second round. And Oklahoma City has played very well against Golden State. And as a person who has tickets, I'd like to see that.
Well, if it's not Golden State, who is it most likely that we?
I mean,
or
right
is
now
it so
you're
close
looking,
you can't even tell?
You can't really tell, but right now you're looking at a rematch with San Antonio. I mean, the 4-5 matchup, which going into last night I thought would kind of favor the Thunder because Steven Adams typically plays really well against the Spurs. They're bigger, a little more physical, but last night San Antonio puts clamps on the Thunder, and they can't score, especially late in the 4th quarter. So it gets a little, even more intriguing than it already was. But right now, there's a chance for a rematch. Beyond that, you're looking, Golden State is an opportunity. Again, depends on kind of where they end up over the last 6 games.
Okay, let's switch gears again. Let's go up north to Stillwater. Excitement up on the campus there.
It's been a big week at OSU, which is a little odd considering you're out of basketball season. Football just started spring football this week, but news on other fronts. Oklahoma State, after years of trying to get this done, announced yesterday that they have started construction on a new baseball facility. And I say facility, it's more than a stadium. I mean, it's a complex. So over the last 10 years or more, they've worked on this athletic village through the money they raised from Boone Pickens, from other donors, and now the next piece of that is this baseball complex. So you've got about a 3,500 seat stadium, state of the art. I mean, it kind of falls in line with Boone Pickens Stadium, the new tennis center that they've got up there, the indoor practice facility, the modern Georgian architecture that carries through to the stadium. A practice facility that would rival anything in the Big 12, a second field for infield practice. It's just an infield that'll be turf. But like I said, it's more of a complex than it is a stadium. It'll also be a new kind of entrance to the north side of campus. This stadium complex is going to be at the corner of Washington and McElroy, which at this point there hasn't been anything that far north on campus. So this will be the new northern window to campus. And this has been years in the making. I mean, they played in Allie P. Reynolds Stadium for forever. A lot of big memories for folks that have followed OSU baseball. The Gary Ward years, Robin Ventura, Pete Gavilia, Mickey Tettleton, all these guys, the multiple College World Series runs that they had, all the way up until this last couple of years when Josh Holliday's taken over and again kind of pumped a little bit of life back into that program. And so now they're getting the stadium expected to open in the spring of 2020. So they've got this year and next year in Allie P. But a lot of excitement in Stillwater around that. And then just the day before that, you found out that the school has extended the contract of the basketball coach, Mike Boynton. Boynton was in his first year, took over after Brad Underwood bolted for Illinois, and had a decent season. They started out pretty good, had a little lull in the middle of the year, and then had a stretch at the end of the year where they looked really good and probably should have been an NCAA tournament team. They win a couple games in IT, they ended up losing in the semifinals, but they extend his contract. Now it's a 6-year contract. He's still going to be the lowest paid coach in the Big 12, but when you look at experience and things like that, you've got a lot of very experienced coaches in the Big 12 that have been around a long time. But this kind of showed OSU's commitment to Boynton, and it sure seems like he's pretty committed to them too, which I think they appreciate.
Yeah, he's an exciting young coach. I'm not so glad don't know that I want him down there. He can, if he wants to move on, he's just like the last guy. There's no need to stay and develop a really good program. I kind of like having OSU down.
No. This is the part where we run the Kansas State disclaimer at the bottom of the screen.
Well, I don't think we need to say that.
That you're not an Okie.
It's kind of a given at this point.
No. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so anyway, that's the kind of information we have for you. They don't like K-State. It's okay. They're Okies. It's fine.
I'm a Kansas fan.
It's more than fine.
It's more than fine. Yeah, okay. It is more than fine. Check us out every day of the week. See us online. Pick us up at a newsstand. Do they have newsstands anymore?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, pick up at a newsstand. That'd be great. We think you'll like what you see. Thanks a lot.